Most people think home is the one place they never have to question. You lock the door when you leave, unlock it when you come back, and everything is exactly where you left it. After living somewhere long enough, you stop paying attention to the little details because they're always the same. 3 years ago, a few months after I rented a small 2-story house outside Knoxville, it wasn't anything special, but it was affordable and close to work. I spent most evenings reading in the living room before bed, and every morning I left for work at exactly 7:15. One thing I always carried was an old brass house key my grandfather had given me after I bought my first place years earlier. I'd kept using it even after moving because it fit the new lock perfectly. The first strange thing seemed too small to matter. I came home one evening and noticed the kitchen chair wasn't tucked under the table. I assumed I'd forgotten to push it in. The next morning, I found the bathroom window unlocked. Again, I blamed myself. By the third day, I noticed the television remote sitting on the opposite end of the couch from where I always left it. Little things. Nothing worth worrying about. Then I started testing myself. Before leaving for work, I'd straighten the living room rug, place a coffee mug beside the sink with the handle pointing left, and close my bedroom closet door completely. Every evening, one of those things would be different. Never all of them, just one, enough to make me doubt my own memory. I even asked my sister if stress could make someone forget simple things. She laughed and told me I probably needed more sleep. I wanted to believe that. Friday night changed everything. I worked late and didn't get home until almost 10:30. The neighborhood was quiet, and my porch light was the only one still on. The front door was locked. Nothing looked unusual. Inside, everything was dark. I locked the door behind me and headed upstairs. Halfway up, I heard it. A soft click, like someone gently closing a bedroom door. I stopped breathing. The sound had definitely come from upstairs. I stood there listening. Nothing. After nearly a minute, I slowly climbed the remaining steps. Every room looked empty. The guest room, the bathroom, my bedroom, even the closets. I checked under the beds despite feeling ridiculous. No one. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Then I noticed my bedroom window. It was unlocked. I never left it unlocked. That night, I pushed a chair beneath the doorknob before going to sleep. The next morning, I called in sick. Instead of leaving, I parked my car a few streets away and walked back through a wooded path behind the neighborhood. From there, I could see the rear of my house. For almost 3 hours, nothing happened. Just as I started thinking I'd wasted the morning, a man stepped out of the tree line behind my property. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight to the back of my house. He looked around once, then disappeared behind it. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then I saw movement through my kitchen window. Someone was inside. My heart started pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. I quietly circled to my neighbor's fenced backyard, where I had a clear view of my back door. A few moments later, the same man walked out carrying nothing. He locked the back door from the outside, then calmly disappeared into the woods. He hadn't broken in. He had a key. I didn't follow him. Instead, I waited another 20 minutes before going inside. The house looked untouched. Nothing had been stolen. But in the upstairs hallway, I noticed something I'd never seen before. The attic hatch was slightly open. I pulled it down. A folding ladder dropped into the hallway. My flashlight caught the outline of blankets, plastic grocery bags, empty water bottles. Someone had been sleeping above my ceiling. The space was just large enough for a person to lie down. There were food wrappers, spare clothes, and a notebook filled with dates. Almost every page matched the days I'd been at work. Near the back was one sentence that made my stomach turn. Leaves every morning at 7:15. I climbed down immediately. I didn't search any farther. I grabbed my wallet, my keys, and the backpack I always kept by the front door. Instead of using the back exit, I walked out the front as calmly as I could and never looked toward the attic again. I spent the next several nights at my sister's house while the locks were completely replaced and the attic sealed. I never moved back into that house. Not because I thought the man would return, because I realized he had probably been there long before I ever heard that bedroom door close. I still carry that old brass house key on my keyring. It no longer opens anything, but every time I unlock my front door after work, I pause for a second and listen before stepping inside. I don't do it because I expect to hear someone. I do it because once in my life, someone was already waiting for me to come home. About 2 years ago, when I lived alone in a third-floor apartment outside Portland, I worked as a graphic designer, usually from 9 until 6, and my weekdays rarely changed. I left at the same time every morning, came home around the same time every evening, made dinner, watched television for an hour, and went to bed. I wasn't an especially organized person, but I had habits. My wallet always stayed in the same bowl by the front door. My shoes stayed beside the couch. My black jacket always hung on the left side of the closet. One thing I carried every day was a faded canvas backpack I'd owned since college. It held my laptop, charger, and notebook, and I never left home without it. The first odd thing happened on a Monday. When I got home from work, my backpack wasn't where I remembered leaving it. It was still beside the front door, just facing the opposite direction. I laughed at myself. I probably set it down differently that morning. The next evening, I noticed my bathroom towel had been folded instead of hanging over the rack. Again, I blamed myself. The apartment showed no signs of forced entry. The locks worked. Nothing valuable was gone. A few days later, I opened the refrigerator and realized a bottle of orange juice I'd almost finished was suddenly nearly full. At first I thought I'd accidentally bought another one. I checked the receipt in the trash. I hadn't. That unsettled me more than anything. Someone hadn't taken food. Someone had replaced it. I started paying attention. Every morning before leaving, I took a quick photo of my living room. Nothing obvious, just enough that I could compare it later. For 3 days, everything matched. Then on Thursday, I noticed something the photos hadn't captured. The blinds over my bedroom window were tilted slightly downward. I always left them completely closed. That night I barely slept. The following morning, before leaving for work, I slipped a single strand of dark sewing thread between the front door and the frame, low enough that it couldn't be seen unless someone knew it was there. When I returned that evening, the thread was lying on the hallway floor. My stomach dropped. Someone had opened the door. I stepped inside slowly. Nothing looked disturbed. My wallet was still there. The television, the laptop, everything. Then I walked into the bedroom. My jacket was hanging on the right side of the closet again. Whoever had entered had touched it twice. That was enough. Instead of spending another night there, I packed a few clothes into my canvas backpack, grabbed my keys, and drove to my older brother's house without turning on any lights. The next afternoon, we returned together. Rather than going through the front entrance, we quietly walked up the exterior stairwell that overlooked my bedroom window. The blinds were open. I had left them closed. My brother motioned for me to stay back. He unlocked the apartment. The living room looked normal. The bedroom didn't. The closet door was open. Someone was standing perfectly still inside it. For a second I honestly thought it was a coat hanging in the darkness. Then the figure shifted its weight. My brother shouted. The man shoved past the closet door so hard it slammed into the wall. He sprinted through the apartment, knocked over a chair, and bolted out the front door before either of us could react. Neither of us chased him. The apartment suddenly felt much smaller than it ever had before. After my heartbeat slowed, we looked around. Nothing expensive had been taken. Instead, we found things that made even less sense. Food wrappers hidden behind the washing machine. A half-empty bottle of water under the bed. A blanket stuffed behind storage boxes in the hall closet. The man hadn't just been breaking in. He'd been staying there while I was gone. Maybe while I was asleep. I never found out. I moved out that weekend. I left behind furniture, dishes, and a television because I couldn't stand the thought of spending another night inside that apartment. I still own that old canvas backpack. It's faded now, and one of the straps is starting to tear. Whenever I set it down near my front door, I always notice which direction it's facing. because I learned something that still bothers me more than any stolen property ever could. If an intruder takes your valuables, at least you know they were there. The one who came into my apartment wanted something far worse. He wanted me to keep believing I was alone.
When I was 26 and renting a small one-bedroom duplex outside Charlotte. I lived alone, worked early mornings at a printing company, and usually went to bed before 10. My routine never changed much, which probably made me an easy person to watch. One thing I always kept beside my bed was a worn black flashlight I'd bought years earlier for camping. It wasn't particularly powerful, but I liked knowing it was within reach if the power ever went out. The first strange thing happened on a Sunday evening. I came home from visiting my parents and noticed my bedroom closet door standing slightly open. I clearly remembered closing it before I left. I shrugged it off. Maybe it hadn't latched properly. The next night, it happened again. This time, I pushed the door firmly shut before getting into bed. When I woke up the following morning, it was open, just a crack. I blamed the uneven floor. Old houses do strange things. A few days later, I noticed another detail. Some of the shirts hanging inside the closet weren't in the order I'd left them. Nothing was missing. They simply looked disturbed. That made me uncomfortable enough to mention it to a coworker. He laughed. "You've got a ghost." I laughed too, but I started paying closer attention. Before leaving for work, I began placing one empty shoe directly against the inside of the closet door. If the door opened, the shoe would move. Every evening, the shoe was lying on its side. I convinced myself the door was pushing it over. Then one Friday, I came home earlier than usual after a machine breakdown ended our shift. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked into my bedroom. The closet door was closed. The shoe was still standing exactly where I'd left it. For some reason, that bothered me more than finding it knocked over. I don't know why. Maybe because it meant nobody had expected me to be home yet. I quietly backed out of the bedroom instead of opening the closet. I grabbed my black flashlight from the nightstand and switched off the hallway light. The house became completely silent. I waited. Almost 5 minutes passed. Then, a faint scraping sound came from inside the closet. Not loud, just the sound of someone shifting their weight. I felt every muscle in my body tense. I wasn't imagining it anymore. Someone was in there. Instead of confronting whoever it was, I remembered something about the duplex. The bedroom closet shared a wall with the laundry room. Without making another sound, I stepped into the hallway, walked around through the kitchen, and entered the laundry room. There was a narrow maintenance panel near the water heater that opened into the back of the closet wall. Normally, it was used to access plumbing. I quietly removed the panel. The opening was just large enough to see inside. At first, I only saw hanging clothes. Then I noticed a pair of boots. Someone was standing perfectly still behind my jackets, only a few feet away. The man couldn't see me through the clothes. He was facing toward the bedroom, waiting. I slowly slid the panel back into place. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I knew I couldn't go back through the bedroom. Instead, I quietly picked up my car keys from the kitchen counter, unlocked the back door, and stepped outside without making a sound. I got into my car but didn't start the engine. From the driveway, I had a clear view of the bedroom window. About 2 minutes later, the curtain moved. A man looked outside. He wasn't checking the street. He was looking for me. When he didn't see anyone inside the house, he hesitated. Then he climbed out through the bedroom window and disappeared across the neighboring yards before I could even think about following him. I waited until several neighbors were outside before I went back into the house. The closet looked ordinary again, except for one thing. Behind my winter coats was a folded blanket, a bottle of water, and several empty snack wrappers. Someone had spent enough time inside that closet to prepare for staying there. I moved out within the week. I never slept in that duplex again. The black flashlight still sits on my nightstand today. It works perfectly, but I don't keep it there because I'm afraid of the dark. I keep it there because every night before I turn off the lights, I open every closet door in my house. Not because I expect to find someone, because once someone waited in complete silence for me to believe I was alone.